when you are logged in, we will send along the cookie, we being the browser. We're very, very good obedient servant to you. We don't even ask you, you don't have to do nothing, we do that for free. Comes for free, great feature, cookie always goes along. All right, rather than reading all this down, example. Got my little crack me bank here, and some stock trading application, okay? And I've got, and I know that you cannot read this probably, I've got 50 shares of GLO, whatever GLO is, okay? 50 shares. These days probably that doesn't mean much anymore. And I actually put a joke in too, so for those of you who know CSRF, you can focus on the lower half, and for those of you who don't know CSRF, you can focus on the upper half, okay? What happened? I got a URL from someone that said, you really have to browse this, man. Don't miss this. This is the best offer of your life. Came into my email account while I was trying to do stock trading, okay? I click on it because I'm a very curious guy. Curiosity killed the cat, people. And so all I get though is this really weird page that says, hey, thanks for visiting Hacker Bank, which should have been a hint. And it's really been a pleasure doing business for you. And I don't know what the hell happened, right? And the rest of you, did you like the joke? Okay, good. I go back to my banking because I realized that that was a hoax, wasn't very interesting, and all of a sudden when I refresh, I just sold 10 shares. Well, how the hell did I sell 10 shares? This is what the code was that I visited, right? Up on top it said, welcome to Hacker Bank, pretty straightforward. But then there was, and again, you gotta really, you gotta love the internet. Right? I mean, it was written for hackers. You have to admit. I mean, the ease of use for hackers to hide content is just fantastic. Because I basically had this little hidden content up here. You can see how I did it. That actually did a submit to my bank, and guess what? The browser was nice enough to send the cookie along, and the bank said, "That's great. It's Lars, all right, and he wants to trade." Cross-site request forgery. Bingo. Was that simple or what? That's a sleeping giant of an attack vector, I tell you guys. Now, how do you protect it instead? There's various different discussions going on. There's good white papers as well from Stanford and others going into a lot of detail. One very simple way that, of course, has to be a little bit more sophisticated to be really secure is one-time per-page tokens. Right? So, and on top of your request, you also send along a one-time token that gets generated by the server for that page while browsing. No one can hopefully guess that. And there's some extra discussions around that. Okay? Joke time. I like this one a lot. Right, and the reason I like it a lot is as funny as it is also true, right? We do, besides the assessments we do consulting for our customers. We help them understand their status. We help them resolve issues. It happens a lot. It happens a lot where you ultimately don't have the upper management understanding, appreciation, and buy-in. And that's part of the problem. When I get asked often, why are we making so little progress as an industry? I think this, as funny as it is part of why we're making little progress as an industry in this space. On the sad side of the joke, so to speak. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about best practices. Okay, so what do you do? What do you do to defend yourself against the things we've discussed? Okay, please understand that I could probably have done 20 slides, and I'm sure you don't care for 20 slides, but these are some highlights that make worthwhile for you to think some more about, and then hopefully that just spark good discussions within your organizations or within yourself. One very, very obvious one is if you have tokens, just make sure that they're not easily guessable. Duh. Right? But it's easier said than done, funny enough is, right? Because random generators aren't so random. Anyone who's a computer science expert knows that random ain't random, okay? So, just be aware of that fact that random ain't random. And if you start, and here's a funny thing, by the way, if you start adding more and more to it, so one thing that I've read, I can't claim I came up with that myself, but I thought it was really, really interesting is sometimes people think 2 is more than 1, right? And 2 is more than 1, so why don't I just take 5 random numbers and I concatenate the 5 random numbers? Well, that should be safer than 1 random number. The opposite. You just gave away 5 random numbers and you made the attacker's chances of guessing the underlying logic behind the random generator so much easier. Funny, isn't it? It's somewhat counterproductive. intuitive, I say. But that's just one such example. Okay, the other thing here is when you transfer tokens, do it always through HTTPS. There shouldn't be any tokens ever over the wire in clear form, ever. There's no excuse in my mind. And that is true for everything. So I know that adds overhead, but you know what? Security tends to add overhead. But at least that way, you know what? If it's a help page, if it's an image, if it's, I don't care what it is, get it over HTTPS. Otherwise, you have the problem we talked about earlier, okay? What else did I have here? Well, it should go without saying, and I think most people have kind of gotten that the hard way, that the URL is really the worst implementation choice for the token. The best is either cookie, or if you can't, then do it into a post parameter. Don't ever use the URL for everything we had discussed. Please, please, please use HTML only and HTTP only and secure. You know, we just here, Raphael and Pelias and I just had a discussion prior to the session talking about how the browsers really should be blamed more, right? And I have to agree. I mean, the browsers really have done a pretty bad job for us as an industry for the longest time trying to help us out at all security-wise. But then when they finally do something for us, we don't use it. Well, that's inexcusable. Here you've got the attempt of them trying to help us out. I agree, it's not a particularly strong attempt, but it's still worthwhile using those features, okay? The logout functionality we talked about as well. I mean, there's just, you know, when you log out, you should be logged out, period. And you should do some very rigorous testing that there are no loopholes to terminating that session on the server when you hit that logout button, okay? The other thing that, I mean, all of these, I can see in your faces, by the way, and I agree with you, all of these are so darn obvious, right? Why do I bother? But you know what the bad news is? I lost count how many customers we have who fell into these traps, okay? So even though they might be obvious, apparently they're not so obvious by the time someone codes the application. Termination, right? How many apps have you seen where the session gets terminated? I mean, you can literally log in the morning, you know, have a coffee break, have a lunch break, have dinner, and you're still logged in. Are you kidding me? I mean, you want to make it easy for the bad guy or what? I mean, seriously, right? I understand, and this, by the way, falls into the old dilemma of security versus usability. Anyone ever heard that one before? Right? What a debate. And it's true, right? Ideally, as a security guy, I'd like to log you out after 30 seconds. Yeah, all right, fine. I grant you that's not very practical. But does it have to be 5 hours? How about 5 or 10 minutes? Something more reasonable, okay? The one-time per page token mechanism that helps a lot of CSRF. Well, it helps not just with CSRF, right? You know, if you have a framework that makes that practical for you to implement, it's a pretty good defense mechanism for some of these other attacks as well. Because ultimately, if your session token gets compromised as an application, you can still say something's wrong, right? That token, just that secondary token, it's like a 2auth, right? Very much worthwhile looking into. The other thing I don't get is how many apps have you seen where you can concurrently log in? And I keep asking why? What's the need for that, right? I mean, you know, the only thing that really enables is for me being logged in and the bad guy trying it in the same time to hack me while I'm logged in. That just shouldn't be the case. If anything, I should immediately be informed saying, dear Lars, you know, AP so-and-so, you're logging in at the same time. Is that a problem? You wanna contact an admin? That's how it should be. Barely ever done, okay? The other thing is you know, we're talking about self-healing a lot, and then immediately the response comes back, impossible, can't be done, right? True, but you know what? How about we go halfway to self-healing? How about, here's a vision for you. You know, what we do today as an industry, if you bear with me for a second as an analogy, is I'm standing up here and you guys are all having heavy-duty machine guns, and I'm going to just stand here and you're all going to shoot for a half an hour, and at some point hopefully you're going to find that little hole here in my armor and I'm going to drop dead. That's what we do as an industry. Why, how about the first time I see a bullet flying, I duck, and the second time it comes, I run? Would that be a concept? That's what we're not doing as an industry, right? When we see that we're getting the same login request 100 times per second, might be time to actually lock that session down, lock that account down, and have it be over for half an hour. You know why that is so simple? Because ultimately, and I'll have a joke at the end of the session, hackers are lazy, believe it or not, very lazy. They like to earn big money easy, okay? So they automate, number one, part of being lazy. Number two, if it gets too tedious, they move on to the next target, because there are so darn many targets, okay? So if I get logged out for half an hour every time I'm starting to get warmed up as an attacker, that's very frustrating, man. I mean, I'm losing so much time because half hour later I can try again. So simple stuff like that. It's not self-healing, but you know what? It goes in that direction in my mind. What else do I have here for you guys? Yeah, obviously you want to do a lot of auditing as well, right? You want to, I mean, this is another thing. You wouldn't believe how many people don't even know that they're getting attacked. Right, it's funny, so I have these 5 myths in some of my other presentations, and one of the myths is that, well, we don't need that, we've never been hacked. Really? Do you know? Most people never found out they've been hacked at the first place, okay? So be sure you're aware of these things, and so on. So the list goes on, and then obviously being at OWASP here, and I don't do it only for that reason, there's some very seriously good information that you can get from OWASP regarding way more than session management, obviously, but session management-wise, there's good tips and tricks there as well, okay? So, one of the final jokes here, I think we all heard that before, but it's also true. Right, and that's very much true for this as well, guys. You know, I tell you, in this age of supercomputers, you can definitely, you can, if the application allows for it, it's a very big if, but if the application allows for it, you can brute force session keys and stuff like that. But the question is, do you want to spend 5 years brute forcing it when the other app actually has a logout button that doesn't work? So you get the picture. You know, at the end I threw in a few more jokes so that hopefully you're all happy when you leave. A couple of things to remember, right? Number one, the bad guys are so creative, you wouldn't believe how creative they are. And they really are, they're very creative people. So when you think you've kind of solved it because you've got this random key and you've got a hex encoding on top of that, and therefore you're done, think again, all right, number one. And number two, you might have the strongest, most sophisticated session management mechanism on the planet, but if your logout doesn't work, or your password change mechanism is so trivial that, you know, I always like the color one. What's your favorite color? I could drop that when I see that one. What is your favorite? How many colors are there? Right? I mean, how hard can it possibly be to guess what color someone might have picked? Think about that for a second, and you'll still see that every so often, okay? So stuff like that will invalidate your best session management security. And then I'll end it with this here. It might be hard to read. It's nice how he's bending over, so at least we don't know exactly who we're talking about. So the thing here is, right, on the one hand side, you've got hackers who are really sophisticated, and they are getting more and more sophisticated. I got to tell you, some of the recent attacks that you can sometimes see, they're way past the script kiddie stage, right? They're no longer just simple try and error. And then on the other hand, you have the unprepared users. It's one of my favorite ones, by the way. And it's also true. Yeah, I also like the one with the sticky note. Got it right here. So that's true, right? I mean, it's just an unfair battle, and that's one of the, if you get any takeaway from this, guys, hopefully you were able to follow, because it wasn't that complicated, I think, the technical aspects of the presentation. But quite frankly, don't worry about them only. Worry much more about very simple things around password and password policies, because that's really where the majority of the attacks will ultimately take place. And